all about, what deal breakers are all about. And most importantly, I always enjoy the lecture from Ustaz Shamseddin, mashallah. So thank you very much. So I'll just go right to the speaker. So Ustaz Shamseddin, can you put us through what deal breakers are? You can also answer the question by giving us examples, like citing examples about them.
Okay, it will look like I was a bit distracted at the beginning there. That's because I was trying to post a link on my social media page just so that a few more people could have it and inshallah join, because this is a very important session. By the way, no titles.
Ustaz, just let me call you Ustaz Shamseddin.
I don't think that I've earned that, right? So Shamseddin really works. One of the things about first name basis that I insist on is because it takes away the formality between people. You want to interact with people, you want them to be as free as possible with you. When we start doing Oga, Mr. something like that, there's a bit of formality to it that doesn't. It's an extra layer that you want to take away. You want people to be able to just feel free with you. Let's do, so that way I'm able to get more with people and the interaction is better. So I'll just jump into the question. I can imagine that there are so many of them to come. Hopefully, I can address as many as possible. Of course, before we begin, I'm also going to say that, as it is with virtual sessions such as this, there might be technical glitches and all of that. If that was to come up, please be patient with us, and everything will be restored shortly. It could be in lights, it could be in internet, it could be anything, it could be technical stuff. So whatever it is, I'm sure that the team will do something to try and get it back on. So deal breakers. Deal breakers is massive, right? I think probably the most important topic in marriage. And a lot of people look at it and think, oh, isn't that being too dramatic? Deal breakers as a topic is actually, the most important thing you should look at. But it is important to understand what it is before you can then understand how to navigate it. I usually tell people at the premarital stage, so at the point where you're still observing, looking, making dua, doing everything, and looking to go into a relationship, going into a marriage with someone, I tell people to pay attention to things. However, there are two things here. One of them being deal breakers, the other being red flags, right? So usually red flags is the more common one. It's the one people talk about, oh, this is a red flag and all. It's important to know the difference between a red flag and a breaking point, right? Which we can call a deal breaker. A red flag can come up in any way. So, for instance, say this is 11, and if this session was to run for, say, maybe 3 hours, right? And this from 11, say 4 hours, maybe. Let me know if this session was to run for 4 hours nonstop at the end of it, right? Now I'm just talking to you. And it feels like a harmless conversation, very good conversation. I'm spending time with you. I'm showing interest and we're talking, We talk for the next 4 hours and we end after 4 hours. Everybody's happy. We go away. Now, I would imagine that anybody talking to me for 4 hours, or if I'm talking to you for the next 4 hours, I'll use the female perspective. It makes it better. If I'm talking to you for the next 4 hours and the conversation doesn't break and everything, there is already a red flag for me to see there. And that is, I'm thinking, as a Muslim, okay, this is 11, 4 hours straight talk will take me to 3 o'clock, right? In the 3 o'clock, in the 4 hours, maybe I have taken maybe a 5-minute break or a 2-minute break or something. You don't know what I've gone to do. But I'm there thinking, we've spoken for 4 hours and at least one prayer period has come to pass in this 4-hour period. And this person did not take break. Like, okay, you know what? Let me quickly observe prayer or something. This person just continued to talk like that. That for me is a red flag, right? Now, you being a female, it could be your off-salah, right? So the fact that there's a red flag does not mean that is a breaking point, right? So it's a red flag that a person, say for example, time for salah has come up and the person has not observed it. But then it becomes a deal breaker when, for instance, you now find out. So you find out, okay, so I noticed that you didn't go to pray. And the sister said, oh, yeah. I'm off Salah. So you see, all of a sudden, it's a red flag, but a red flag that didn't lead anywhere. So you pay attention to it, but you go, okay, it's actually permissible, if a person is off Salah. But if it were to be a man, what exactly would the excuse be to say, you spoke for 4 hours, it was time for Salah, you didn't go? Now, the deal breaker is that bit where you know that you cannot handle. It is your limit in the context of your relationship. That is what the point beyond which I am not going to go, right? Now, the definition of what a deal breaker would be will vary from person to person. So it's not standard. There's a standard definition for it, but the actual example of it is not going to be the same thing. So let me give you an example from my own perspective, and I imagine others will have it different. So if I was to say, if I was single and I was looking for, say, maybe a spouse, I don't take alcohol, and alcohol is a big deal for me. There's so many things that people can do, and but for me, alcohol is a big deal. Now, if I look at it like, if I don't take alcohol, you come with me and you take alcohol, it's a deal breaker for me. It's a deal breaker because I'm not even going to look, I'm not even giving it a chance. It's that point, the moment I know that you do this thing, I'm out, right? That's a deal breaker. However, there are people who maybe perhaps in their own time have consumed, say men, for example, who have consumed alcohol in the past and understand better what it feels like to maybe be tied into it. People who look at it and they think, I've been through this and I've gotten out of it, alhamdulillah. I know how to help someone else. I feel like I can tolerate this and help the person come out. For that other person, alcohol may not be a deal breaker. The person might look at it and understand that, so it's going to be different from place to place. Infidelity to some people. So you're in a marriage and you're caught cheating. To some people, it's the end. They're going to end it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that to another person is going to be the end. So you see, deal breakers will always vary from person to person and situation to situation. A deal breaker to you today. So you have so many people who go, so you ask many sisters, what's the deal breaker to you? And upfront, let me just say, this is not me justifying anything. It's just an example. Upfront, you ask many sisters, what's the deal breaker for you? And they go, if a man hits me, that's the end, right? If he slaps me, that's the end, before they get married, right? And then they get into the marriage. And sometimes you see things will happen. A lot of them will get hit and they won't leave the marriage. Suddenly, you say, like, you said if a person hits you, you're leaving the marriage. Why are you still there? And then suddenly they realize it's not as simple as that. There are certain things you see as a single person and you think it's black and white. Oh, he hits me and I'm out, right? But imagine a situation where, for whatever reason that has happened, right? You suddenly begin to think, okay, what's the decision? I am here. Do I have the financial capacity to leave? Am I able to take care of the kids? What happens to this, and you consider everything. And all of a sudden, what's at stake is way bigger than what you have. And then you now have a person who, as a stumble, whatever, these things are usually very complicated. You suddenly find that what seemed to be very straightforward to you before you got married, thinking, if this happens, I'm done. You suddenly realize it's not as black and white. So even deal breakers can change from time to time.
Oh my
Have
gosh,
I done justice to that?
Okay, that makes so much sense. Especially the parts where you said deal breakers can also change from time to time. So the next question is, so how do you differentiate between a deal breaker? Like, how do you differentiate a deal breaker from an issue that is clouded by a person's, personal thoughts or understanding of life?
It's going to be a very difficult thing to do because, like I said, deal breakers are personalized, right? So in essence, what it means is that your own profile, your knowledge, your limits, everything will define what to you is a deal breaker. So your deal breakers will be defined according to what you know or what you think you know. It's nearly impossible for you to separate it and say, oh, this is just my own thinking, but this other one is the reality. However, you can seek counsel, you can seek knowledge from others, because in our society we have so many people who would have experienced certain, there's nothing you're going through in life that is a first time, someone else has experienced it before. So that's that's kind of like the essence where you have, let's all learn from the experiences of others. If I make a mistake today, it should be easy for me to tell the people coming behind me, oh no, don't do this, this is likely to be the outcome. So that when they get to that particular point, they're able to separate. Now, a person might think based on, so for instance, I am married and I've been for quite a bit, alhamdulillah. Now, if I speak with somebody who's never been married, and I ask that same question where I go, if your husband was to have an affair, and the person goes, that's a deal breaker for me, it's the end, right? Now, I understand that, you're laughing. The expression changed when I said that. You couldn't even help it, right? So a person says, oh, my husband has an affair, that's the end and all, and the person's never been married, right? I would understand that it's easy for the person to say that. It's not necessarily according to how it tends to happen. So part of the ways that by which a person can separate it is for me to say, okay, why do you think that this is going to be a deal breaker? And the person has the right to, it's personalized. The person has the right to say, okay, this is what I don't think I'm going to be able to tolerate it at all. But then it then becomes easy for me to say, okay, how easy do you think it is to leave a marriage? If you've built something, it's not just easy to walk away, right? And there are cases, situations happen. I mean, across board, male, female, when we talk about a person having an affair, we tend to think that it's limited to men. It's not. A lot of times, women, at least I know that from a place of statistical fact, that a lot of women engage in extramarital affairs, and it's not very straightforward, right? It's sort of easier. Society understands better when it's the woman. They say, oh, anything, before she would have done that, she must have been going through that. But then when you're a man and it happens to you, nobody gives you that benefit of doubt. You're just bashed all over the place. So I know that sometimes these things are in black and white, but it's going to be difficult. Your knowledge, your limits, everything is what defines your own deal breakers. So as such, your deal breakers will be limited to what you know, what you think, what you desire. Whereas it may be different from the deal breakers of the next person. Doesn't mean, it's kind of like when you have a letter 6, a capital letter 6 dropped on the floor, two people either sides of it. One person is going to say letter 6, the other person on the other side is going to say letter 9, both of them will be correct, and both of them can also be wrong depending on how you look at it.
Okay, so what happens in this instance where the deal breaker is found after marriage? Like your husband, you didn't think he used to drink, and drinking is like a big deal for you. Then after marriage, you found out that this man drinks. So what do you do in that situation? How do you handle that?
That it can be very, very challenging, and sometimes life would throw difficult curveballs at you. Yeah. So say you didn't think that your husband consumed alcohol, and you made your basis on that. Now you discovered that in marriage, a lot of things are happening at the same time. So number one, you've now realized that something you absolutely didn't think that you were going to be a part of, you've now become a part of it. Number two, you now know that there was a deliberate attempt or successful move to deceive you or hide it. And that also adds a different dimension to it. It's one thing when I discover it before we get married. It's another thing when I discover it after marriage. I'm going to be asking so many questions. I'm going to be looking at it and thinking, is this something that I just did not know about? Or is this something that I actually spoke up about? And this person was clear about it. Now, if I did not know about it, kind of difficult. It softens your position a little bit, because this person, in fairness, went into the, both full declarations, right? The person went into it not understanding it was a deal breaker for you. And perhaps it never really, so many people have very short courtships, right? So short periods, and people don't go as thorough with research. Sometimes distance prevents you from knowing certain things, and you can't ask all the questions in the world. So what I usually ask of people, during that period where you want to go into a marriage, is don't seek to know everything, because you can't know everything. It's impossible. The person you want to know doesn't know all of himself or herself. So you can't even know anything. Everything is out of it. However, seek to know if anything was to happen, would I be able to build upon this? Once you have that, you're good to go, right? So you now discover that in the middle of it. I'm already looking at it. Did you lie to me, or did I just not pay attention to it? If you lied to me, it's making the consequences more dire, right? It's less likely that I'm going to be willing. It was something that I just discovered, and it just happened to slip everybody. Then we look at it, and that's the enter stage 2, where you now look at it. Okay, what? Let's discuss this deal breaker. This is a deal breaker for me. It means that I'm not looking to soften my stance, right? But like I said, deal breakers can change from point to point. So if, say for instance, debate about alcohol.
Assalamualaikum. I'm so sorry. I think we lost the speaker, but I'm sure that you'll be joining back very soon. Okay, now I think he's back. Assalamualaikum. Your speaker, okay. No, you're on mute. Oh,
Okay, good.
okay.
Only the host would be able to unmute. Sometimes it can get crazy like that. So for instance, I was talking about that bit. So I discovered that, say for instance, you consume alcohol, and we just didn't discuss about it. We didn't talk about it going into the marriage. Now I'm going to sit down with you and let you know this is a deal breaker for me. It's unfortunate we didn't talk about it, but this is a deal breaker. I cannot be in a marriage with a person who does this. So what do we do? Then at that point, you're looking at it and you're thinking, okay, what's the stance of the other person? Sometimes a person comes at you and the person goes, the view of it inside the marriage will be different from your view of it before you went in. Before you went in, you would have been able to just pretty much just avoid all of the complications. But already being in it, you can't avoid it again. You're already in it. So at that point, you're going to have to try and resolve. That has to come first. If you try to resolve, then you get to the end of it and you're still not able to navigate it. We can then talk about, exit deals and all of that. So we talk about, you say alcohol. How bad is it? This doesn't work for me. So what do we do? So we try to find the middle ground, right? So if realistically, you imagine that a person who maybe you're marrying somebody that is maybe 30 years old, right? A person who's been consuming alcohol for maybe 10 years, right? You then need to become realistic on your own part. Like, how easy is it for somebody who's been taking alcohol for 10 years to suddenly leave the next day? You have to be real with the person's exit plan. Okay, typically if the person gets help and all of that, it might be something months, a couple of years, something like that. Now, for as long as you see the person stay committed to that exit point, knowing that this is the only realistic pace by which the person can exit, that seems to make sense. So you see why I said it's not a static thing, it's dynamic. All of a sudden, you see that person who said, alcohol is the deal breaker for me. And we're saying, hey, your husband is drinking. But what you would not know is how they're trying to work on it, and that the person is showing consistency in trying to make it better. And that works. Sometimes it might be a deal breaker for you, but you see that this person genuinely is struggling with this thing. But then you look at that deal breaker versus what the person has already brought to the table. A man who is very, very responsible, loving and doting over you, loving and doting over the children. You guys have children now means that he's not even the father of your kids. A person who does everything you want, and the only blemish is that alcohol bit, right? That the person genuinely struggles with. Suddenly, you see that living thing is not as easy again. You go, I mean, am I just going to leave? At that point, you look at it, and the person's willing to work with you on it. Then you start to work on it together. That's one possibility when you find out something, and that's one of several examples. Now, a different one could be a case of, that's a deal breaker that can be worked on. Some deal breakers you don't even want to work on it. It happens, end of story. Now, you ask a lot of women in marriage, and you say, if your husband cheated once, right, had a full-blown sexual affair once, right, would you leave the marriage? Women who are currently married, I promise you, we'll run it through the comment section. A lot of the married women will say, if he's apologetic and he, tries to make a change, they'll probably consider that they'll stay. It'll hurt, but I promise you, you run that through the comment section, a lot of people will choose to stay. I don't know how many brothers we have online. If you find your wife having a sexual affair, I don't know if any brother will be willing to work on that. Now, I've handled a few cases, and I know that there are men who actually who do try to work on it, but it is difficult. So you see, again, it varies from place to place, gender to gender, person to person. It's just what it means to one person is not going to be the same with what it means to another person. So it's also, so if it's one of those ones where you think maybe you come into the room, or may Allah not make us go through trauma. You come into the room and you find someone having sex with your wife, right? What do you do? A lot of men will just tell you it's the end, right? Ahmed, says, work on waiting, bye-bye. Do you understand? Like, really, work on what? A lot of men will tell you, no, because what it means, it's not, in terms of society, it's not necessarily the same. But the way we have, people who would say it's the end, same way we have others who would say, I want to work on it. I know this for a fact, right? Because I've handled cases where the men decided and said, okay, you know what, I'll try to work on it. So, I mean, when we say the deal breaker, there are different deal breakers. Which particular deal breaker and the intensity, what it means at that particular point would also decide. So there's that one that you think, oh, okay, I want to try and work on it. And there's that other one will go, oh, there's nothing to work on it. There's nothing to work on. Bye-bye, let's go. If you find it in the marriage, it's on case-by-case basis. It's not a general thing. Whereas before you go into it, it's easy to say, just avoid this thing, right? Now, avoiding it even before you go in does not necessarily mean that that's going to be for every case. So for instance, you find a deal breaker, that person who was looking to work on the alcohol, you find that deal breaker before, right? The person may also be looking to work on it. You just need to be able to give yourself a lot of time, patience, and, to be able to look at it and think, is this, this person is not giving me an act, people who, I can't get married to a person who drinks. And that's, okay, I'll stop drinking. And all of a sudden, boom, the guy stops drinking. And so, do you understand, right? It doesn't happen that way. At that point, the person is giving you an act. The person is just acting up to get over the line. And when you get over the line, they do what you call switch and bait. I think bait and switch, something like that. So the person just flips on you. You're already married. What can you do? Yeah. So in the marriage, when you discover that, is a lot trickier, but it's on case-to-case basis.
That was quite elaborate, really. So people tend to hide like behind the fact that there's some questions you're not supposed to like ask, like maybe perhaps before getting married. So what questions do you think people should ask? Or sorry, let me put it this way. Are there questions that one should not ask a potential spouse? Because we have people who hide behind the idea bad traits with these claims, like you're not supposed to ask these questions. I don't know if you get
you. You're asking me to commit my life to you. You're asking me to come and bond with you and walk a path with you forever, right? That's not child's play. Excuse me. Excuse me if I pay attention to myself and I value myself enough to want to know every single thing that I can know. Now, again, like I said, you can't know everything, but I will know as much as I'm able to know. And I don't think that any question goes out of bounds. I think one of the questions that people tend to, and I saw this skit online where I think the guy was asking, and this guy was asking in a kind of stupid way on the skit, but I'm pulling out what the person was asking. The person was asking about body count, right? And I mean, just for those who don't understand, body count is, how many people you've had sex with. A lot of people say, oh, how can you ask that sort of question? I mean, we're looking to get married. If I ask about your sexual history, I've not done anything wrong. And if you ask me about mine, I should be able to answer you. You're looking to go into, if you understand what marriage means, the strength of it, the amount of sink that goes into it, you're not going to ask me why I should want to know. I should be worried if you're not concerned about this sort of things. I should be worried about you to look at you and think, is this person somebody that pays attention to details? Because these are very important stuff that can come back. Look at it. You marry a person on the assumption. So let's say, again, we use that, let's play sex into it again. So male to female, right? Females don't, it doesn't matter as much in our society, how many women a person slept with in the past, right? I'm not saying relationship, right? I'm saying had sex with, right? If you have a man who's good to you and does everything to you and has proposed marriage to you, wants to marry you, and you suddenly hear, this one has slept with 20 women before, a lot of our sisters will go ahead. They will look at what they have in front of them. He's good to me. He's nice to me. Yes, that was in his past. Something, something, something. Is he a good man now? Even the people who want to advise you will tell you to go ahead. Flip it. And you tell the brother, this babe has slept with 20 men. A, B, C, Bashir. This one down, Ahmed, See. Again, it means something different. All of a sudden, the brother is thinking, me, I don't want to marry this sort of babe. I don't have this sort of wife. So you see, these things, they can have different meanings. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's any question that's out of bounds. So long as it's not, if it's related to, Ahmed says I would disappear immediately. I mean, it is what it is. If the question is not, if the question is related to the journey that you're about to set up, I think it should be asked. For as long as I'm not coming here to ask or maybe something about your parents that it's unnecessary. Just different stuff. So if I'm asking to know about you, to know about your family, to know about what you've been through and all of that, I don't think that any question is out of bounds.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, so here, like, what if you meet a person and then everything clicks, it's all butterflies and all of that, and then the person tells you that they cannot be upright, basically, and they can't be practicing in terms of like celebrating non-religious, non-Muslim holidays, and some other morals, like they don't pass maybe the hijab, they don't want to observe the hijab and all of that. What do you think a person should do?
I think that who you are would decide that, right? What business do you have? You might think the person was thinking, oh, who are you to make that call, right? So for instance, you're somebody who has a lot of questionable character, and then you're asking somebody to be of a different standard, right? You have a right to want what you want, right? However, again, like I said, different people will desire different things. Just because a person doesn't use the hijab as at the point you met the person does not necessarily mean that it's going to be a deal breaker for you. So for instance, let's put two things, right? There is using the hijab and there is covering your hair, right? Some people don't even cover their hair, right? And if you meet somebody and the person says, I'm not going to be able to do this, what truly would decide is the level of your own being and how confident you are in yourself. Your level of your being in the sense that some people say, there's nothing there if my wife does not cover. And that's up to them, right? It's their own level of faith that would decide what sort of spouse they get and what sort of values will be important to them. Whereas some people say, no, you've got to use the himar, and that's important for me, right? This is minimum level for me. Even with the hijab, you have different, this is hair, both and all of that, and different lengths, and or dependent on the person. You have so many people do different things in our society, right? I think there was this thing that happened, or was it over Christmas or thereabouts? And I think every year, and I think when I realized it this year, someone put a tweet about it, and just because I support Liverpool, I will pick Liverpool Football Club. I'll pick that. So a person said, "Is Mo Salah going to celebrate Christmas this year again?" And I was thinking, what's this one saying, right? But because I saw the Mo Salah bit, and it just I picked it up, like, okay, oh, Liverpool there and all that, and I went to the page, and and I realized it's something he does every year, right? So he would come in pajamas and Christmas tree and all of that. So honestly, the first thing would be of confusion, like, okay, I don't understand, right? But look, so imagine somebody like that, right? That's how he feels about it. Of course, you can't rule out the fact that being in Europe and being in England and different the society and the environment where you are and upbringing and so many things, who you are as a person, all of this will come together to decide what you find acceptable or not, right? Now, imagine that sort of person, right, stating that I don't want a wife who would do this. I mean, you already are on that level. What rights do you have to be saying that someone else will not? Now, a counter argument would be, okay, just because I'm on that level does not mean that I should want somebody who will be on that level. I might be looking for somebody to help. We all want a spouse who will help us, in the right direction. You don't want somebody who is taking you in the wrong direction. That might be, the person's reason for wanting it. But again, like I said, your own personal belief system, the level of your own being, everything will play a large role in whether you go with that or not.
Okay. So now we're diving into couples. Basically, now you're married. So you're saying, how does one ensure that one spouse takes up their responsibilities without conflict in the house?
I want you to read that again, so I'm sure that I'm getting it right.
Okay, so it says, how does one ensure that one spouse takes up their responsibilities in the house, of course, without conflict?
Depends on who you're married to.
Everybody does what they're supposed to do. Like, for some people, they say the woman is supposed to wash her plates, or do you clean the house at the time? Do you take on your responsibilities? Does your husband provide as they should, and all of that? I think
it depends on the character of who you're married to. That's the first bit. The second bit is it depends on what sort of marriage you run. If I say it depends on the character, there are responsible people and there are irresponsible people, right? And what decides in that context who is responsible and who is irresponsible is going to be heavily dependent upon what the responsibility is. In the context of provision, maybe financial provision, a man, if it's expected of the man to provide, a man who's able to provide is responsible. A man who's not able to provide in that context, depending on what the reason behind it is going to be considered irresponsible more times than not. But just because you're financially responsible doesn't mean that you're morally responsible or in every other way. In marriage, when we say responsibilities, it's an all-encompassing way. You kind of look at it and pick an average across board. How do you ensure that your spouse does their responsibility? It begins from you. Are you doing your own responsibility? If you're somebody who wants to enforce something, I mean, in my house, for example, everything I ask for, I am able to do, and I do from time to time. So for instance, if I'm going to ask of you to sweep in a certain way, it's because for every time I sweep, I have swept at a minimum standard of that way, right? So if I don't even know how to sweep, how can I then ask certain things of certain, or people? And that's just an example. It doesn't mean anything. So it begins with you, who you are and what you are doing. If you're responsible, it's easier for you to be able to call your spouse to order without necessarily being an issue, right? I don't keep late nights, right? So it's easier for me to demand that my wife does not keep late nights. And that's straightforward. If I'm a man that goes out and comes back at 12 midnight or 1 a.m., how do I even know where she is all the time that I was out? How easy would it be for me to say, okay, to demand of my household salah? So it begins with you. Now, that thing that begins with you, it needs definition, right? So when we say responsible, it's part of the things that I talk to people about in the premarital stage. Define, be sure you understand what marriage means to the person you're looking to get married to, right? Yesterday, I put up something, and it has caused quite a bit of a stare. I said, a lot of men, the definition of good wife to a lot of men is a voiceless, childbearing housemaid without ambition. A voiceless childbearing housemaid without ambition. And somebody came at me and was asking, why are you not talking about the Islamic perspective? And I'm looking at him. Well, what's the Islamic perspective? Does Islam say that women should be voiceless? They shouldn't have ambition and all? What do you mean? So you see that person already has it twisted, thinking, this one, and then before you know it's one-to-one thing, they will just throw in the word feminist, and you're thinking, what are you saying? Right? You want to talk, you can't be more Muslim than Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who got married to somebody who had a voice, who had an ambition. You can't be more Muslim than that, right? So what do you mean when you talk about all of those things? Well, of course, that's story for another day. So again, do you understand what marriage means to the person that you're looking to get married to, right? When you do understand it, does the person understand what marriage means to you? Both of you then need to sit down and discuss a lot of these things and define what marriage means to you. Each person's role, right? There are women who will say, my money is my money, your money is our money. You can understand. And I imagine that at some point, I shouldn't have even mentioned it now, people will start throwing questions on that, right? There are women who will say, my money is my money, your money is our money. If you marry that sort of person, you already know that the responsibility has been defined, that your money is our money. So if you then don't bring your money, you will be considered irresponsible. Do you understand? If you have an issue with that, you are better off addressing it before you go into the marriage. You already know who this person is. Why would you then go into the marriage and then start dragging, right? Address it before. If you have a need for a wife, you want to not take up employment for whatever reason you have. I don't subscribe to that. There are people, let's be real, in our society who subscribe to that. If that's what you want, don't go and get into the marriage with somebody has a full-blown career that they're passionate about, and you then seek to clip the wings and say, it's part of your responsibility. How do you get the person to do their responsibility? I want you to leave this one and focus on. You knew who I was before you came in. So these things are better defined before you go into the marriage. So that's another bit. So like I said, the first thing, it begins with you. Ensure you do your own bit, right? You want to call someone to order, you do your own bit. Second bit is define, let everybody be on the same page as to what the roles are. There are women who do not want to cook, but they will tell you it's not written anywhere that it's the woman's role to cook. It may not be written anywhere that it's the woman's role to cook, but if you're in a society where culturally it is the woman's role to cook, and you're getting married to a man who believes that it is the woman's role to cook, it's going to be difficult to get into the marriage and say, how do you get the man to do something, you want to pull that off? It'll only lead to conflict. Both of you need to be on the same page. There are men who you don't even need to cook in a lot of homes. They'll employ somebody to do all of that, and all. So different things. We tend to be selfish when we push these things, by the way, when we're talking about responsibilities and roles. A lot of people say, I'm supposed to do this and that, and you are supposed to do this and all. But if we could come together as a team and we're able to just, define all of these things, or most of them, because again, like I said, you can't define everything. If you're able to define most of the major ones before you go in, it becomes easy to call the person to order. Now you're already in the marriage. We have it defined. We know the responsibilities. We know everything. The actual technique by which you go into it has got to be aligned with the theme of the house. Like I have said, I will go for that bit of leadership by example, right? I know that I'm going to call you to order. I know that I will challenge you if you come late. And for that reason, I will choose not to come late to the house. That makes it easy for me. That's how I will push you forward. For some other people, even while I'm saying that, I have to be able to watch. Again, this is where effective communication comes into place. I have to watch the manner in which I speak, the tone, the actual words. It's not, you have to be able to understand it. Even though you're correcting a person, even though you're seeking for a person to, bring something, to do something properly, it needs to be effective. It's not just communication. It's not just I talk to you, you talk to me. If, as I'm talking to you, if I begin to scream this way and I'm shouting, you see how it looks like, why is he shouting? Right? What's wrong with him? You understand? So right volume, right tone, right? I'm talking to you now. Imagine if I start talking like this, I'm doing this, and you're thinking, what is wrong with this guy? Why? Just calm down. Be calming down. So the volume, the tone, the actual words that you use, the timing of it. The timing of it is where emotional intelligence comes into play. All of those things you need to be able to pull it. If you're able to pull everything together, I think that you would have minimal misunderstanding. Having said that, the other person, I said it begins with you. Who you are married to is also a big role. A lot of people don't want to take up responsibilities. So you tell the wife, babe, you're supposed to do this and all. Some people still give attitude. Some women will still sigh and still get defensive and do whatever and do. If that's who she is, it is what it is. It doesn't matter how well you try to put it up. If you're asking a man who does not want to do certain things or has grown to become irresponsible, you want to ask the person to do certain things, the person is either going to look for an excuse or turn it into a fight, call you rude or whatever. So all of those things, they play a role.
Now, I'd like to announce to the audience, please, that we have about 13 minutes to take questions. So you can use the chat box to ask whatever questions you want to ask. Okay, so I'll just go to the next question. So I know that a lot of people have in-law issues. They're like, our in-law are like, they're always intervening in their issues. So how do you ensure that we keep our marital issues away from the in-laws? Is it possible?
Keeping the marital issues away from in-laws. The first question would be why? Why do you want to keep your marital issues away from your in-laws? And as simple as it may seem, this why a lot of people cannot answer it. You say, why do you want to keep it away? Right? There are issues that I understand you should be able to keep it away, and there are issues that I think, hey, why should you keep it away? You have a husband who is struggling with something, a vice, for example, maybe point, we say 2-3 months or 6 months, or you can try. If the person has got, when we talk about in-laws and we talk about we make it look as if in-laws are always negative. Nah, in-laws aren't always negative. My father-in-law, I'm not even sure. I think either the guy will be rivaling my dad or he
Apologies. I think the speaker is dealing with some network issues, but
Which one?
okay. Is it? Okay, so sorry, we lost you. You're talking about your father-in-law. Okay. Yes.
So this time it wasn't from me. Was
Oh,
from you.
sorry.
Okay, so I was talking about in-laws. That people tend to think about in-laws in the negative way. It's not always so. Yes, I know that the moment you say in-law, everybody's thinking, oh, negative. No, in-laws can be positive, right? So when you talk about how can we keep the issues away from the in-laws, it depends on the particular situation that you have at hand and the context surrounding who the in-laws are and the context of what we're talking about. Now, let me try and go with what I think that you've asked, which is, okay, so you have issues, but it begins with how much knowledge you have and how much sync you have with your spouse. If you have a good system in place where you are able to resolve, again, like I said, I wonder how people go about this thing. Over premarital counseling, we're talking in excess of 13 modules, right? 13 modules, excess. And one of them is conflict resolution. How do you go? Look, if you go into marriage without having been effectively told about conflict resolution, you are going to have to learn. You've spent all of your life apart, single people, being alone, that you're about to come into close quarters with somebody, you're living together with a person in the context of a spouse. You're going to have issues, right? And you're going to have to learn how to navigate resolving conflicts. And this is the point where, out of confusion, a lot of people think, okay, let me bring the in-laws in, right? So if I've tried to talk to you and I've tried all of the ways that I know, and it's not, gone right for me, and I think, oh, I'll just talk to the mom, or I'll just talk to the dad, or I'll just talk to my mom, or I just talk to my dad, and stuff like that. Or she might decide she just wants to talk. It's as a function of whatever the issues they're going through and their knowledge on conflict resolution. There are no two ways about it. You have to seek the knowledge, right? If you don't get, it makes things worse. Just because in-laws might be older, or in terms of maybe parents or stuff. Just because they're older doesn't mean they know more than you on everything, right? You expect it to be the norm, but it's not always the case. Just because they're older doesn't mean that their character is always going to be the best. It doesn't mean that their values will always be the best for you. But a lot of times you don't know this. We just look at it by default and we think, oh, just because this person is my father or my mother, it means that they have to know more. And then I bring them in, and they are going to try to resolve the issue based on their own marriage, their own views, their own values, their own knowledge, and their own enlightenment. If that does not sync with the marriage that you formed, then you're going to have issues. For some people, it will take them involving. You involve, it gets worse. You involve, it gets worse. You involve, it gets worse. They'll have to go through it to get to that point where they then decide, if they choose to say, okay, you know what? This is not working. Let's not involve these people. See, let's just resolve it on our own. And there are other people who say, for instance, you seek professional help, and the first time you do it, it works for you. So you suddenly realize, I don't have any reason to even involve parents and all. So you have people talking to you about, we've done 10, 15 years, and we've never involved parents. We've never involved family in our issues and all of that. It all goes into that bit. That one is there. But there are other times, again, like I said, that it comes out good. And, you have there are parents who will poke their noses. There are in-laws who will poke their noses, regardless of whatever it is you do. You try not to talk to, it's 6 months, 2 years, Mela, answer the couple's trying to conceive. It's default. You get married now, in 9 months, they start looking at you in one eye. Like, what's up? What's going on? Right? And the thing is, they're not going to look at the man. They're going to look at the woman. Right? I don't know how it is that we've come about that. So many people come with so many different things. So sometimes you are not even the one going to involve them. Sometimes they are the ones coming at you. You have people asking you, how far, how far? After 2 years, you have people asking you, are you going to dualize the road? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? And all of that. And then, suggesting different things. There's so many issues that happen. Sometimes you can't help, but they will come. Sometimes it's you taking it to them. Other times they will come. Again, how you handle it is going to be dependent on the strength of the relationship that you have, both of you, right? If you're very much in sync. So for instance, a situation where both of you are trying to conceive, you have a husband who understands that, you are not the one that creates children. Allah gives as He desires. And you have a wife who understands that maybe despite the fact that you may have, as a man, if fertility issues, the person chooses to stick with you. It doesn't matter if you guys are able to stay in sync. People will try to poke their noses, but if you maintain the same front, they're not going to be able to, they find it more difficult to penetrate. And I think that that's the best way to go about it. But then how many people are able to establish this sync? Topic for another day.
No, so I know we've talked about deal breakers. You've mentioned red flags briefly as well. We've talked about deal breakers in marriage and before marriage. But then we have now we're moving to toxic relationships. So we have a lot of people in toxic relationships right now. So how do people walk away from toxic relationships? Can you advise?
Do you mean premarital relationships?
It doesn't really specify. So I'm supposing in the marriage, like walk away from, you could talk about both though, like in the marriage or in relationships.
Okay, so how do you walk away from a toxic relationship? Again, it goes back to that bit where I talk about the definition of things. Who decides what is toxic? So what is a toxic relationship? Again, the definition of that will vary from place to place. There are certain things that will happen in my home that someone else will see and be like, you know what, this is toxic, right? A woman who keeps late nights, right? And whose husband also keep late nights, and they both don't have an issue with it, would hear my wife talking about, I have to be home before Maghrib. You understand? Well, no matter what, I have to be home before Maghrib. And the person may look at my marriage and think, oh, it's toxic. How can you have a marriage where a woman, you can't even groove, you can't even be free and all of that. So you see, the definition of a toxic marriage would, vary from place to place. However, we have all of those basic ones that, regardless, we know that, this is for. So when you begin to have emotional bullying, physical abuse, domestic violence, and, financial abuse, neglect and stuff like that. It's so bad that sometimes you have cases of, when people bring up cases, so naturally, so you have, say a wife brings up a case and you're trying to ask about the husband, because of course you need both sides to be able to, so we're talking about a case where a person's not sexually satisfied. You can't do that alone. You need your husband, right? And sometimes I just ask, like, why don't you just discuss with your husband? Like, can't you just tell the person that, tell your husband that, you want this, you want more and all of that. And I used to hear people talk about it. And I used to think they were overblowing things until I got so many cases and people actually said it. And they talk about how, I dare not bring it up. Because if I bring it up, I'm going to be accused of infidelity. And I'm thinking, I don't understand. You need something that you guys have access to, you're asking for it. But just because you've spoken, it then becomes, a case of accusing of infidelity. If you've not been doing it somewhere, how do you know that? This and this should happen. Hello, we're adults, we have needs and all of that. But again, so what's my point? The definition of who defines what a toxic relationship is, it's going to vary from place to place. Now, let's assume that we've found a situation that we can all agree is toxic. How does a person handle that sort of situation? It is difficult. It's very, very difficult. Sometimes it's difficult for you alone to do it. Because it depends on the nature of the toxicity, right? There are certain toxic situations that mean that, so there's something called Stockholm syndrome, right? Where a victim in a certain situation would have developed emotions, sort of sympathetic emotions, will be sympathetic to the cause of the person holding them captive, right? And that's where you have an example would be a case of where you have a spouse that beats you up, right? Now, we all know that that's wrong. No matter what's happening, that's wrong. Now, you have a spouse who's beating you up physically, right? And at the end of getting beaten up, you have the wife, someone is saying, are you getting beaten? And then the wife is saying, oh, it's actually my fault. And taking ownership of it in their own minds and all of that. And you go, hey, hold on a second. How do you talk to somebody who's gotten to that point to say you have to leave? No matter what you say to the person, then it's going to be an issue. the person is going, people going through different levels of abuse. Sometimes it's just not possible because the person has already gotten to the point where anything you say will count against you, right? So a person who believes that it's their fault for being beaten, that's how it's supposed to be. They should be beaten if they do something wrong. How do you show the person that it's not wrong? You can only try, but trying is difficult. Trying is easier for, say, somebody like me if I come in a neutral professional capacity. It was my own, right? Imagine being an in-law. If you're going to give counsel, the person better listen to you. Because if the person doesn't listen to you, then you become the enemy. So, I mean, think about it. If the person doesn't listen to me, last, you will not come to me again. You will not come to meet me and stuff. And everybody will go their own way. No recurrent effect. But imagine you being a sibling. So you meet a sister, and you're talking to the person about, you're going through this abuse. I saw this and this and this and this. And the person's saying, don't worry. I mean, the question before now was, how do we keep our issues away from in-laws, right? So imagine somebody effecting that and saying, I don't want my in-laws involved, or I don't want my siblings involved. And then the person saying, oh, don't worry, we're fine in my house. How do you help somebody out who has not yet realized that they need help? So that bit has to come from the person, the need for help. It's a different case altogether if the person reaches out to you and says, look, I'm going through this. I need this. I want out, right? It's easier for you to then suggest and say, get this way, do this, enforce this, have and all of that. But then you see where I started it from. First things first, define what toxicity is. What is toxic to one in one marriage will be different from what's toxic in another marriage. But beyond that, what is the position of the person that's going through it, right? And we're talking about, third party into you looking at the person. Now, let's say you are the person inside it and you have identified that this is a toxic marriage and I want to be out of it, or I don't think that this needs to be. What are the ways to go about it? Again, it depends on what situation you're going through. If it's something that is affecting your physical health or your mental health, I draw a line at that. Marriage can only be valid and effected when there is life and when there is security, right? If there's no life, there's no security. Everything you call marriage is a waste of time, right? So I'd say this: if you're getting beaten, if you're going through any situation that's threatening your health or safety and all of that, the first thing is to exit. It may not be popular view, but it is what it is. The first thing is to exit. How can you be in the point in a home where you're getting beaten, and from within that space is where you think that you can fix it? You need to first go and keep yourself safe. Be safe. There's life. Everybody's happy. Hey, now we've ensured safety. We can now talk about marriage. Marriage is secondary to life. Life comes first, right? So and it's not just, a person physically beating. Sometimes you just wake up and they find, oh, the woman is now depressed. Oh, the man is going through mental strain and stuff like that. And you wonder, how did this person get to this point? It's because you're going into a marriage and you're going through so many things. You can't talk, you can't do this, and you can't express yourself, and you're not addressing it. So it's important for that, for us to look at it that way. Now, you did talk about this situation being, you said relationship, so it could be in a marriage, or it could be in a premarital situation. If you're beginning to, it's got to be a deal breaker now in the point of a relationship that's not even led to marriage. You're already seeing signs of what's going to happen in the marriage. You've got to step back, right? I tell people, if you can avoid it, prevention is better than cure. That's what they say, that prevention is better than cure. Why should it makes more sense for me to just prevent it? Let's not go in. And you find so many people in marriages and they talk about, I thought I was going to get better. I thought that she was going to change. I thought that he was going to change. That's an adult. It's a 50-50 case. If a person is going to change, you might play an influence, but after all is said and done, it is the person's decision whether to change or not. So don't think that, it's given just because, I think that this person needs to change just because I have this set of values that I want to enforce, or not enforce, I want to effect, or I desire the person the person will automatically take it. The person can get into the marriage and decide, no, I choose not to do this, and there's nothing you can do about it. I choose to maintain this way. If you're in any relationship, you've not married the person and you already consider it toxic, that's a deal breaker. No need to negotiate. It's the deal breaker. You believe that you know for a fact that you're feeling toxic, right? Again, like I said, who defines what toxicity is, right? Sometimes you also need to work on your own definition of what it is. So for instance, say I told my wife before we got married, and I said, look, you're gonna have to get home before Maghrib, right? That's how sort of marriage I want. A person who wants to stay out late, who wants to live that sort of life, might look at that and think, oh, this guy's going to be controlling. I've not yet married you and you're being bossy and you're da, 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 da. So you see, based on that person's views of what toxicity is, the person might look at me and be like, okay, you know what? It's a deal breaker. I'm not going to, because I'm not going to budge on that. Exceptions will exist, right? But I mean, when we even look at take the security situation in the country, take the morals of it and all. Of course, there will be exceptions. People whose jobs need them to be, sometimes you look, a medical doctor's got a night shift. What do you want? You're going to ask me to come home before Maghrib. I've got a night shift. Some things, it's common sense. You need to be able to look at it. But I'm talking cases where, there's nothing. You just want to groove and extend into nights as a function of regular habits, So a person might look at it and think, just because this guy is insisting on this or saying that this means a lot to him, is going to be too controlling. That's toxicity. But look at it in a different sense of it. To someone else, that's not toxicity. But to someone who considers that as being toxic, then the person is also going to leave. At the end of the day, your definition plays a big role in everything.
I don't know. I didn't want you to stop. I was really enjoying the session. I was engrossed already. But we have to move to the audience now. So we'll be ending the session now, and then we'll be taking questions from the audience. That'll take about 25 minutes. So by the next 15 minutes, I think, should be done. So my first question here is okay, so somebody's saying, is there anything like petty deal breaker? Can some deal breakers be overlooked as compromise?
It's already a conflict there. If you call it a deal breaker, and then you're talking about petty or being overlooked. If it was petty, it would not be a deal breaker. Probably just be a red flag, right? If it's a deal breaker, it's not petty, right? And again, at the beginning, I think one of the things that we discussed was the person who asked this question. I'm tempted to ask, like, I hope this is not you beginning to negotiate with yourself. Like, you see the deal breaker is there clearly, but you just want to get yourself to just accept it and, let's just be married and then just move forward. Or maybe in the case where you're in the marriage, this is just sometimes desperation. Permit me to use that. Can just get you to want to negotiate with yourself and tell yourself, well, it's not so bad. It's actually okay. You need to be real with yourself. That aside, there are, of course, things that are not overlooked, right? Things that can be worked upon. And we talked about, that case of alcohol as an example where, this was not previously discussed. You get in and you realize this person does this. But you look at what it is you have in the relationship, this person in the marriage, good husband, caring, does all of those things, you just have that person, consumes alcohol. And the person says, you know what, I didn't know that this was a deal breaker for you. We didn't talk about it. I didn't lie to you about it. However, now that I know that this way, this is what it is, I'm willing to work on it and all of that. That's something you've got to consider. You can't, I can't say you can't, because obviously you can do whatever you please. But it does not make so much sense to me from where I stand to then make that a deal breaker. Even though it might have been the deal breaker before, the manner in which this happened has ensured that, that's just something you should be able to give considerations to, knowing that it wasn't the person's decision. It's just how it has happened. So I tell you, it's not petty. If it's called a deal breaker, it's not petty, right? Should you overlook it? I'll probably say no. Should you address it? Yes. So sometimes the way and manner you address it makes it look like you've overlooked it, but it's not petty if it's a deal breaker.
Okay. So I know we mentioned something about like going deal breakers in the marriage, like you found out after getting married. So I know we talked about alcohol and then we talked about infidelity, but somebody's also saying, what if it's porn addiction? So I'm guessing all of it addresses that as well.
Well, porn addiction, again, it's, I mean, you're absolutely spot on. That is covered in all of what I just said. Porn addiction will be a deal breaker to some people. Porn addiction may not necessarily be a deal breaker to others, right? It's you, it's what you see. You might look at porn addiction and you think, because at the end of the day, in deciding what a deal breaker is, it's like looking at the score. We can say, in some high standard or in some high demanding homes when it comes to education, if you score a C, that's a bad grade, right? If you look at it standalone, a C in maybe English language might be seen as bad in some homes, right? But when you look at it in the context of a general result, you see a C in English language, but a distinction in maths, a distinction in physics, a distinction in chemistry, a distinction in da 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 da, and you have that, you know, people always talk about the C and say, oh, I had a C here and da 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 da, but overall, this is a very good result. So when you're assessing a spouse and deal breakers, sometimes these are the things that you consider. You look at him, this is good, this is good, this is good. Overall, the person is matched. The person has enough score for you to be able to move on. And what the person does is not something that comes back to the level of damage it has on you at that particular time and projected into the future is not as high. Then that may just affect whether it's a deal breaker or not. For a lot of people, porn addiction, as these different addictions, can be broken. But it also needs to be well addressed. If you don't address porn addiction well, it can affect your sex life. It can affect a lot of things within the marriage. Or it doesn't even, where I stand, that's even less than alcohol, because some, that a lot of people deal with. So yes, I think that's covered.
Okay, so I think you addressed the next question too already, because the person is saying, what if you find out that while you're trying to keep a relationship with a lady, she's sleeping with another man? What's your advice? So I think it's still under deal breaker, right?
Run away, run, no. I mean, what's there to address, really?
Actually,
now flip it, right? With the man, this question is straightforward, wrong, right? Now flip it. If you're the woman and he's sleeping with other people, I'll also tell you to run. I'll also tell you to run. Now, the question will be whether women would think it's bad enough. I've seen people defend the man and they go, oh, she's just forcing herself on him. Madam, are you all right? What is she's forcing herself on him? Did she drag him there to go and put him there? So it's, for me, it'll be a deal breaker. Yeah. But someone else might not see it as such, but I'd say to run.
Okay. Do you think it is important to discuss your past relationship with a potential spouse? At what stage, if yes?
It depends. It depends on what it depends on how potent and how much effect your past relationships are likely to have. If in a past relationship, say for instance, you've had a child, that's you discuss that straightforward. From the point the person comes at you and says, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, and you're talking about getting to know one another, that's the point you let the person know, look, I've been in relationships in the past where I have a child, there are other situations, maybe not as potent. So you say one or two relationships that didn't go according to plan, you'd understand that. It's not, if the person is asking, I don't see why you should not be able to discuss it. It's in the past, right? There's nothing to hide. You're asking someone to, commit and spend the rest of their lives with you. That's not something that anybody should have to hide. If your past is very much, and I hear a lot of people talk about this, they say, oh, just so long as you've made your peace with Allah and all of that. And I think that that's used in the wrong manner. So for instance, I use that bit about having body counts. You are somebody who's had a lot of relationships, right? Say maybe to the point where maybe you've even been a stripper at maybe a club, meaning that so many people would have slept with you and stuff like that. If you don't, look, people will talk about, oh, if you talk about this with the man, A lot of men would leave. Most men would leave, right? But who you want is a man who would seek to marry you, despite knowing that you've been that it no longer matters. You seek to marry somebody, you spend the rest of your marital life praying and hoping that that past does not come up. And you see, whenever it is that past comes up, it can catch up with you and undo everything you feel that you have built. It can be very, very disastrous. So I'm saying, you know, these are things that are better discussed. It's your past, it's your past. If you're involved with a mature person, which I imagine you should be, a mature person should understand. I didn't get married to the first person I liked and I tried to be with. It is what it is. My wife knows about it. We talk about it. We talked about it then. You know, it doesn't mean anything. It just is what it is. But imagine a situation where, say, for instance, you've been in a relationship with somebody, a sexual relationship with somebody, and then you get involved with another person, not understanding that maybe they're cousins or very close friends and stuff like that. See how you get to the point of getting married and you realize that ex-boyfriend that you did so many things. Maybe the guy even already was, having all of those dirty talks and stuff. Things can get very complicated. It's easier. It simplifies everything when we just put it out there. That's my position.
Okay. I'm trying to answer as many questions as I can because I think we have quite a number of them. So here's someone is saying, okay, so rather than discussing past relationships, do we discuss mental issues, like past mental histories with potential spouses? For instance, trauma.
Okay, can you repeat that? There's a glitch in the network while you were talking about.
Oh, okay. So the question is, do you think it is important to discuss mental health issues in the past to potential spouse? Say, for instance, trauma.
Yes, I think it's important. It's important to discuss it for different reasons, so that the person knows what they're getting into. Because, it can be very, very demanding. So many people need help that they don't get from their spouses because their spouses don't understand the depth of what they've been through. They don't understand how it is they're supposed to come through. So let me give an example, a very deep one that many people, unfortunately, have experienced. So imagine a person who's been molested sexually, right? I think that's important to discuss with somebody you're looking to be with, right? It helps their expectations because, look, going into marriage, your post-traumatic experience, especially if you've not been sexually active since that experience, can be very bad. You could choose to be with your husband and then suddenly it triggers that, and so many cases of I was trying to have sex, I'm trying to get intimate with my wife is just pushing me off and all of that. It's easier when you understand what the person's gone through, the experience that the person is at. It's easier to understand even when you're getting help or a situation where the person doesn't know about it, and all. I think these things help. I think part of we should own our conditions, right? You didn't make yourself that way, right? It is what it is. I think one of the things that pushes us to want to hide stuff is how society tends to view things, and we look at it like, oh, you're going to look at me like I'm crazy. I'm all of that. If I've had issues, I've had issues. If you're looking to go into a marriage with me, I want you to go into a marriage with the total me, the total package. I want to be free. I don't want to hide to keep something on the inside, Unfortunately, disclosing is going to come with pros and cons. Cons being that if you're disclosing to the wrong person might use it against you, which can, be a very bad experience, and a lot of people have gone through that. But overall, I still say it makes more sense for you to disclose.
I totally agree with you. I think the fear is because of how perhaps the person is going to respond to it as well. So somebody's asking, at what stage should a woman push for divorce? At what stage should a woman push? Okay.
At the point where she feels like and this is not just a woman, by the way, it's both of them. At the point where she feels like she's tried every single thing that she can try, and the situation is not going to be positive going forward. That's the point she should push for divorce. So what are examples of the things you can do? Number one is to pray, right? And I ask people, a lot of people talk about, just pray, just pray, just pray. And they tend to use it wrong. I'm very big on prayers, right? And I'm beneficiary of prayers, I understand the strength of it. But kind of like when we say medicines work, right? Drug prescriptions do work. It's going to work, but you also need to eat. You know, the food works with the drugs. You can not eat, and then if you still take the drugs, you know, it drops a lot of things. So logical decisions will walk hand in hand with the prayers, and that's the first thing I think you should do. The next thing I think to do is look at the immediate support structure you have, immediate positive support structure. So in my own case, my immediate support structure included my mom and my father-in-law. Both of them were trustworthy people from both sides. That myself and my wife, we had identified as a team that this person is going to be straight with you. It's not going to be about sentimental stuff. This person is my child. This person, both of them would be real with us, right? So I think that's got to be the next one when you've tried all of course, the first bit being that you have to speak with your spouse, look for how to resolve it on your own. You've gone through the communication, right? So when you get professional help, it's going to vary from home to home. Sometimes when you still have access to, you know, that immediate support structure, you might choose to pull that in first. Other times, you might choose to get a professional help first, or whatever it is. If you've gone through, getting professional help doesn't always mean that the issue will be resolved. It needs both parties to come and do the needful. If you've tried every single thing that you want, and you're still at that point where you feel like, I cannot proceed like this, and nothing is going to change, seek the boss.
I really hope that the answer helps whoever asked the question. So how do you help a man who is not able to set boundaries for other women, even though he's not naturally interested in them, but he looks open to all?
There's a conflict there. If you kind of set boundaries with them, you can't say he's not naturally interested or something like that. You know, that if you're not naturally interested, it is what it is. You step away. The nature of my work means that I get to interact with other females, right? And that's a good example. There is no how I can be interested in my work and not be interested in the people that my work brings to me. So it means that I would speak with women, I'll speak with men, right? When we talk about how you want to help a person, why are you the one helping the person, right? Is the person doing the needful first? So for instance, let's just take, for example, and I can see only you, right? I know that there are participants, but I can see just you. So imagine that this is a private call, me and you, right? Imagine my wife somewhere talking about how can I help Shamseddin if he does it. Shamseddin is here and is gisting with woman. And you're there saying, I want to help him. Is Shamseddin trying to help himself first, right? The first bit needs to come from the person. A person just wants to, you have to take responsibility. It's sweet. It's sweet to do a lot of all these things, talk to women, do all of that. It's wrong, but it's sweet, right? So somebody's there. You need to take responsibility. You need to be the one to be, if you are, so for instance, say, you see me making the effort, you see me trying, you see me getting involved, and you see me getting my spouse involved, you see me doing all of those things. You will know a person who is making efforts, right? Who really wants to do it. And how you help the person will be a function of both of you looking at the challenges you have. What exactly are the challenges? There was a time, and this was way before COVID, yeah? For the earlier part of the last decade, right? So say in and around the 2012, 2013, 2014, thereabout, I used to do physical sessions. A lot of physical sessions that meant that I did more of traveling. If you're in Lagos today, I'm doing Lagos. If you're in Abuja tomorrow, I'm flying down. And it used to be like that. And then a couple of things happened on those cases. And I just realized these physical sessions are opening me to too many things, you know, that sometimes you're going to meet a person who is vulnerable, and the person is in need, and you are now there as a listening ear. I just didn't like the vibe. So the first thing I started to do was I tell my wife, I said, look, I have a session with this person, XYZ, XYZ. This is all of the details of the person, right? Where the person works, this is This is where I'm going to, this public place is where I'm going to be having the session with the person. call me at exactly so time, which I know will be maybe just before we begin the session, sometime during the session, and maybe at the end of it. If you call me at this time and my phone does not go through, call this emergency number straight and ask them to come check on me, right? I started that way. Now, you see somebody making moves like that. This person's already trying. So when you talk about how can I help a person, it's easier for her to then say, I'll help him. Oh, he said to call him by this, then let me call him by this. Let me check on him. Let me be sure. Are you okay? Are you good? Da, 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 da. You understand? After that, I generally just, my clientele expanded to a more global stage, meaning that I can't be in London today and be in Dubai tomorrow and it just was no longer feasible. And I had started using virtual sessions, and that for me just brought a lot of cleansing. It made life easier for me. As I'm here now, when I finish, I'll just remove my cap. I'm going to pray, and then after that, we'll do movie time with the family and all of that. And it just makes it good. It reduces the risk of things that could happen and all of that. So you see, physically, you can see me making moves. I'm putting things in place to try and help me. It's easier for somebody to key into that and say, oh, okay, I see a situation where I'm hiding my phone, I'm hiding somewhere, I'm doing that, and you say you want to help me. I'm not even helping myself. How can you help me?
That makes so much sense, really. So there's another question from YouTube. The person is saying, how do you deal with a husband who is misbehaving and it does not want to be reported, and there has been no improvement?
Sometimes when people ask questions in this manner, the questions are quite vague. It's easy for me to answer this, but it's important for me to also try and stretch it. It's easy to say, how do you deal with a man who is misbehaving? But it's important for me to also know what exactly counts as a man misbehaving. What exactly is it? Is it that the man is trying to correct you? You don't want to accept correction, and you're not saying, "Oh, he's misbehaving. He's doing that." So many times, and I've handled enough cases to know it's when you find a lot of people over sensationalize cases. Is when you get there and you ask the deeper details, and you bring both of them, and you realize, okay, but you said this man was doing this. All right, that's by the way. Now let's assume that truly the man was doing something, right? So let me get the question. Shoot me the question again. How do you deal with a man who is misbehaving?
Is misbehaving and it doesn't want to be corrected. Sorry, okay. How do you deal with a husband who is misbehaving and he doesn't want to be reported? And there has been no improvements. He's not making corrections and he doesn't want to be reported either.
Well, you deal with the person by reporting the person to whoever it is. You deal with the person by reporting the person. Look, nobody wants. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
You deal with the person by reporting the person to appropriate quarters. So nobody wants to be reported. And I'm sure that over this, the course of this session, I have had that you've asked me something about involving in-laws and all of that. That's why I said, it's not every time that when we talk about involving in-laws, it's in the negative side. So say, for instance, I have realized that a spouse, let's say maybe she suddenly realized that maybe he's begun to gamble, right? Or, infidelity, alcohol, whatever, all of the stuff. Let's say you realize that. You've tried to discuss it. It's not happened at all. There's nothing wrong in looking at the person's most loved ones, right? Who are in positions of authority, the person's father, the person's mother. You absolutely are within your rights to report to the person, to them, so long as they are trusted people that can see things objectively. Because for a lot of people, unfortunately, the fact that their family is, I would say his family over yours, right? Because it's easy for people to manipulate things and say, oh, she went to report me to her family. This is her family. It's easier when you're able to pick people from his own side, people he would respect. That way, that's bit of he trying to twist that, because anybody you've reported is likely going to get defensive, right? I'll give you an example. There's something that came up one time, and my wife was against it. There was an opportunity. I was engaged in something. I was engaged in a consultancy role. At that point, that wasn't too productive, right? And this is a long time. That was the only thing I had. I got tired of it. I wanted to leave, right? And my wife was not in support. So the first time, so you look at it, who are the two most trusted women in my life, right? It was my mom and my wife, right? So I call, so I called my mom. I said, no, I called my wife and I said, look, I think I want to leave this place. And she said, look, you've got nothing else to do at this point. Why would you want to leave this? I'm just tired. I don't feel like this thing is growing me. I don't feel like I'm getting better. And she said, no, you know. And before I even called them, just as the conversation finished, I was trying to go through what the discussion I just had with her before I called my mom. Then the next day, my mom called me, and instantly I knew what had happened. Next thing, maybe she just went out of me. Oh, your wife said you want to leave the role. You want to do this. You want to do that. Blah, 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 blah. She had gone to report me, and I'm thinking, oh goodness, you know. And both of them ganged up on me and prevailed, right? And I said, you know, so that's an example of it. What about if she did not? And I asked at some point, I said, why did you go to her? And she said, look, you're about to do something that is very crazy. At some point, that she considered crazy. Everybody's going to ask me when he was looking to make this move. First is I don't support the move. But then, even if you did do it and you know the consequences became very bad, people are going to ask me when he was looking to make this move, why didn't you involve us? Right? So you're going to have to look at it. You can't look at a person who is looking to self-destruct or doing things that are not, you know, nice, and you say, oh, the person does not like it. Yes, there will be people who will make big issues out of it. Then that it's no question about whether you should report the person. You should. How to go about it, that's a different ball game altogether. And I think that goes beyond the scope of this program and the amount of time we have. It's how you go about it that is important, not to report it. There's no question. Whatever you do to keep a person in check within limits is absolutely fine.
Nam, thank you so much for all of your insightful answers and for the enlightening session. We are honored that you honored our invites, if that makes sense. So we've come to the end of the session today. I learned so much from this session, and I'm sure that the audience as well did enjoy and learn a lot about the session. So before we go, would like for you, Shamseddin, to help us with a closing prayer or maybe a closing remark. I don't know if you can hear me. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, did you hear me?
Yeah, I lost you. Oh. There was a glitch. I heard the bit about, you know, thanking and all of that. And there was a break, and I heard before we go.
Yes.
Before we go, I think is the last thing I heard.
Yeah, I was saying that would like for you to help us with a closing remark / a closing prayer, so we can end the session. Just a brief one.
Well, somebody's going to help with a closing remark.
I would like for you to help us with the closing prayer. I don't know if you get that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Now I get that. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I'm glad that we've been able to be here. I pray that the intentions with which everybody came here to learn and try to heal one or two things in their marriage. I pray that all of what we've gone through, the things that we've said, I pray that they convey the positive messages that should be able to help us in the society to create better homes, to create better communities. I pray that this counts in the positive for us with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I pray that when it is that we do convey again, it should be in good health, with everybody being able to talk about how this has been beneficial for us. May Allah reward us all. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much once again. We pray that Allah continues to increase your knowledge and that He strengthens your home. Bi-iznillah. So Nam, assalamu alaikum. Would you like to say bye to our speaker? It's so nice to have you today. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, sir. I'd also like to tell the audience to please wait behind. I think we'll be having the happy hour session. Zainab, are we having the happy hour session?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay, all right. So would like to tell our audience? Okay, all right.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Zainab Mashood. I'm the Community Engagement Officer for MICA. Can anybody see me?
Yes. Now, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. I would like for us to really have a interesting, interactive happy hour session today. So if we don't mind, can you kindly switch your camera on? Let's get to meet you. You can switch your mic on as well. If you would like to say something, we would like to hear and see everyone. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. I am really looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say about today's session. It was a really interesting session for me. And I think everybody also enjoyed it too. So if you would like to say something, what was your favorite part of today's session? You can unmute yourself and say something. We would like to hear from you. What was your favorite part of today's session? What was your favorite question? What was the favorite answer that was given by the speaker? What is that one thing that what that one new thing that you learned today? What was the favorite part of today's session for you? If you would like to say something, you can unmute yourself and answer. I know everybody has a lot to say, so can we hear them? Yeah, Sister Balkis, you would like to say something?
Okay, yeah, I would like to say something. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone.
Wa alaikum salam.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I actually joined the meeting very late, but with the little I met here, I would like to say exactly my parent, to Micah, and also to Shamseddin Giwa, exactly my parent. If there is something I would like to ask, it will be, how long can a woman actually wait before she go into another relationship, like someone who got divorced or someone who left her husband with the kids? For how long can such a woman wait before she go into another relationship? I would like your idea or your suggestion. Okay, you can wait up to 6 months, up to a year, up to this and that, with your valid reason. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi.
Alaikum salam warahmatullah.
Thank you so much, Sister Balkis, for sharing. Jazakumullah khairan. That was really interesting. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Tawheed.
Alaikum salam wa
Walaikum
rahmatullah.
salam, Zainab. How you doing?
Alhamdulillah. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm surviving.
What was your favorite part of today's session?
Well, for Shamseddin Giwa, I mean, he's a long-time friend and a pal. Yeah, so listening to him, I always enjoy it. So I think every part is a favorite part. Then the major thing I picked up that I learned from him today again, I'm not sure if he's still around in the call. I think he left. So is that part of when he said at a point he had to inform his wife to call him at some certain time when he's having a physical session. So it's something I picked. You know, sometimes you can't be too all yeah, I know what I'm doing at all. So it's a way to put checks and balances, which I feel anybody doing something in that line that you have to constantly meet with opposite sex all of the time is something we should try and look into. so that we can help ourselves and perhaps our spouse also can help us. So that part I picked. I don't know if that makes sense. Mr. Zainab. Hello.
Oh, I'm still on mute. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I have so many favorite parts in today's session. One of the thing I liked when he said was, a question was asked and it says that, what should we do if a person is misbehaving and he doesn't want to be reported? He said, report the person. I mean,
yeah, honestly, I agree with him on that. You know, some of the time we are so engrossed in this way of it's our affairs. Let it be our affairs and all. No matter what, I'm sure my wife knows someone in my family that a living person in my family. It's just a click away. That if she says, "Pim, your brother is misbehaving," if the person calls me and say that, "Guy, are you know," because she knows who that person is or who those people are. I don't know, but she knows. And honestly, it helps. Whether we like it or not, in a way, it helps. We need someone to put us in check, whether as female or as male. We should have someone with respect. So another question I couldn't ask him that just came to mind is that, what if this person does not even, there's nobody in their family that they really respect, and this person can go for months, for weeks without even talking to any family member or something? That's another question I think I forgot to ask him. Maybe I'll reach out to him. But I wish he could have answered it and the audience would have benefited from it. Because there are people like that it is what it is. They don't care and they don't respect anybody, you know. Maybe perhaps they may have a friend or someone somewhere, but it's hard to spot, because the first set of people we think of is people you grew up with, your family member, your older ones, your parents, and this and that. So what if this person falls in that category of someone that does not have people like this that they respect in their family? I don't know how to answer that. I wish I could answer. So Micah, Sister Zena, maybe you can send him an email. And
yes,
you can
I
share
would
with
I
our
would love to help
audience.
with that. I would love to help with that. I'll connect with you after the session and get a clear understanding of the question and then send it to him, inshallah. And
Yeah.
you might actually find somebody that is interested in your question that has one or two insights in this gathering now. Is there
That's
anybody
true.
that would like to contribute to Mr. Tawi's question? Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
I think we
Would
have
like
about
your
31
input
people.
into this.
A sister asked a question in the beginning that how long can a woman stay, right, after divorce or something? Well, from Islamic perspective, I think when you say after divorce, I think before you go, if you stay like 3 months, I mean, for you to be sure that you are not pregnant, because if, for example, if he's a man, they will say that you can marry almost immediately, right? So everybody has different healing process. So if you know that, because you have to be sure before you get into another one. So it doesn't have a certain time. I think it has to do with your healing process. If you know that you are healed from the previous marriage, I think you're good to go to step into another one. Because unnecessary waiting, because life is not plug and play. You don't know. You can't. It's not like just when you are ready, you just go to the shelf and pick. This happens to both men and women. You can't just go to the shelf and pick the spouse when you are ready. But what is important is understand your healing process. When you know that you are healed, alhamdulillah, I think you should be able to move into another one. My opinion.
Thank you so much, Jazakumullah khairan, for sharing that. In my excitement about today's session, I didn't ask if we have new audience joining us today. Assalamu alaikum. If today is your first time joining Micah, or maybe it's been a very long time since you joined Micah and you're just joining back today, we would like to see you and say Assalamu alaikum to you. If you kindly switch on your mic. You don't necessarily have to switch on your video if you're not comfortable with that. You can just turn on your mic and then let's get to meet you. I'm seeing some new names here and I would love to meet everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So I'm kind of new. I've listened to a few of your talks, but this is the first time I've stayed for the happy hour. I think that's what you called it. Jazakallah khairan for organizing this lecture, and your other lectures as well is really beneficial. And it's nice to be able to listen to someone that actually understands, the culture, the society in which we live in, to give us relevant advice and relatable advice. So Jazakallah khairan for doing that. The previous brother that has just spoken, I actually was thinking about his question as well, saying, if there's a person, a man that doesn't have someone that's, I think the Yoruba term is Onibawi, or like someone that he respects.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you have said it all.
Yeah, that he respects, because for some people they're in a position of power, both in their profession and their home. They're the breadwinner for their extended family. So even their elderly, maybe parents or relatives, can't really tell them, if they're doing something wrong. Who do you go to report that kind of person? So I am interested in the answer to that. I was thinking maybe a sheikh or someone that imam, someone that they respect in the like Muslim community, or in the like, maybe if they go to a mosque regularly or something like that, maybe they might be shy of such people and maybe listen and correct their behavior. That's just a thought, but yeah. Anyway, Jazakallah khairan for this.
Ms. Jamila, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really nice that you can join us today. I'm so glad. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Mr. Ahmad Oyeko, I can see your mic is on mute. I don't know if you want to say something.
I don't know if I can still say something.
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah. During the session, Giwa talked about, I think someone asked about the question is, how much should you share about your past with your present or prospective spouse? I think if Allah has hidden something, yeah, you can talk about general things. Personally, I would advise that you can share, but you should be wary, because a lot of people, how they handle things are very different. This has nothing to do with maturity or something. It may keep coming, and in your present relationship, maybe sometimes when you have issues, whether he or she may use it against you, that you want to check it, this kind of thing. Yeah, so if Allah has hidden something, I think the best for us is to try as much as possible not to use that to destroy our present relationship. However, we should try as much as possible also to do something that will not take us to revisiting those past. For example, I am married, I've got my wife. I don't see any reason I should be texting or sexting in terms of text, any past relationship. What's the point? I have my wife, she's here. If I want to imagine anything, I can call her up, babe, what's up? This and that. Why do I need to flash back on some things that cannot I cannot help my present relationship, Yeah, so releasing those things or trying to bring them closer to you because you feel there are some pain that you have shared in the past and you still need to maintain them and this. You should think about the impact of what it will be or how the other person may seem to handle it when they find out. Yeah, so we should try as much as possible not to bring them into our present relationship or closer to the point that questions will be asked by our spouse. That's okay. Well, you told me this person is your friend. Okay, so you had some things together in the past. So why are you trying to bring them around? This and that. This is a difficult question, or these are questions that are difficult to answer. So we should just try as much as possible not to bring the past into the present. That is my own opinion on this, because if you give too many details, I don't know how women see this, but an average man, want to, if you say, man, I've been a stripper, I've been into like 50 or 30 men. And